Hey guys, welcome back. So, after a lot of contemplation, we got the rail system here, and after a lot of contemplation, I've come to the realization that the rails just cannot sit upright in this configuration. They're going to have to, I'm going to have to grind them off of these two cross members and then flip them 90 degrees so these points here will be facing outwards. And then my first plan was to basically move them, once I flip these out, move them into the width of a 2x4 and then just screw this down, get a 2x4 the length of these rails, 56 inches, and then I would use the 2x4 and screw it down to my wooden frame, and then just keep adding cross slats all along the wooden frame to screw this down to. But I just don't like the idea of how thin that's going to be, and how the thinner this is and the taller the U-joint is, the taller basically all the weight is from its center of rotation, which will be the U-joint, and then after the U-joint it'll be the torsion that this thing gets applied to. So it'll basically be the height from this up to where the rider is, the center of mass of the rider, which will be some distance in my current rig, even though I'm working to get that shrunk down. Anyway, what that essentially comes down to is that would just apply a ton of torsion to this thin of an area. So I decided not to go with that, and I have a couple of these big boys laying around. I've got 3 of these quasi equal length. So what I'm going to do is I will take these rails, rotate them out 90 degrees, and then I'm just going to screw these things. I will screw the rails to the sides of these, but I'm going to make, I will basically have these cross members that will go over the top, and then I'm going to use this much thicker gauge. So I've got this thin little gauge for the top, and then this much thicker gauge is going to be for the bottom, to kind of also help it raise it up off of the 2x4 base. Just that way when the carriages, when the carriage is running along here, since this will all be turned, this will be running this way, and so actually go this way, and I don't want the bearings and the bolts, whatever, I don't want them to catch on any of the cross beams. So I've got to make sure that these rails are up high enough, that these ride up high enough to where they don't catch on anything. But I've kind of measured them out preliminarily, and they all look good. Plus I can tighten these down and shave the little bit of the bolt that's on there, and get these Loctite on there, or some capture nuts probably. But that is the next steps. I'm gonna grind these free, cut all the cross beams to the right length. We'll need 4 of these, 4 of these thickness, and then I've got 4 of these thickness already. I'm just gonna cut them to the right length, and then drill holes in them. Well, I've got to drill holes all the way through the 2x4s and everything for the screws to go on, but I'll do that once kind of closer to getting this mounted to the mid frame of the motion simulator. Right now I've got to work on stuff like the carriage. Again, I've got to get these rails removed from here, and then they're going to, instead of sitting on there like that, they're going to sit on there like that. And so I've got to design where I'm going to design a system to hold them, because now there's going to be a lot more play, a lot more tension for this thing to want to fold out this way. It won't want to fold in because it'll be on the rails, so it can't really fold in. But I've got to stop it from basically folding out, and then I've got to stop this entire plate from tacoing in. So I've got more of that really thick beam, or really thick bar stock. So I'm just going to make cross braces for this, and then come off those cross braces and do something to weld down to strengthen these. I've got to cut this one off and do the same for that. And then the front trolley also, got to cut these. Got to cut these off the front trolley, turn them 90 degrees to where they're facing inside, and then weld them, and then figure out a bracket to get them welded a lot more stable, which is the one reason why I was really hoping I could get the rail system to work, is because if I weld them, like welding them this way, they're already fairly stable. You don't need to do any extra bracing the way that they're currently on. But once I turn them, I'm going to be welding on just an edge, and so it's going to require a lot more bracing. But I wanted to get a video showing what the next steps are, what the plans are, and then again, to show more pieces of this and these three pieces of bar stock were actually the chassis of one of the mobility scooters. This piece was rounded like so, but I kind of straightened it in my vise. I just put it in my vise and then clamped it until I could get it as straight as possible, and just kept going all the way down the bend to get this kind of as straight as possible. And then these pieces were welded onto the end, but again, this thing was fully bent around, so those two pieces were on the side like so, and then that was a loop around. But that's just more recycling any metal pieces I need. I'm basically going to be pulling them from these scooters until there's nothing left of them to use. So that is next steps for the simulator, so I'm gonna get started on that today. Talk to you. Alright, so latest on the update, I got the rails turned sideways, got them cut off of the mount they were on, got them turned sideways, and then mounted plates at the front on top and bottom, and then got them set on this big piece of wood. I don't know what the dimensions of it are, but that runs the entire length of it. And then modified the rear carriage to mount onto that sideways, and it's certainly not perfect. I have to fix the rear one up a little bit. The distance on one of these is a little off, so might fix that or just do more testing and see if it's okay. The front one up there is done. Move these out of the way. It's more or less done. I've just got those mounted on there, so the motors will mount onto here. I'm going to use these spare gearboxes I have. They have mounting plates that are identical to the ones that are on the rig right now, so I'm just going to get these cut and welded onto here, either side, and then that's where the new motors will go. And then I'll just need to get a piece to connect the front to the rear. Just get these are the pieces that are going to reinforce the side of this, so I'm going to get those cut down, and then those will reinforce so the thing won't taco and bend inwards when the pressure of the sim rig is sitting on top of it. But then I got to get a piece that will connect this rear sled to the front motor sled, and then build a piece in the back, probably off this, build a piece in the back for the connecting rod on the rear motor to connect to, and then I've got to finish this arm here and trim this down and flatten it, squish it down, so that way this will go all the way through and I can tighten that. And then at that point, once I get the front motors mounted and then get the two trolleys connected to each other, it'll be a lot more four like that. Yeah, get those two connected to each other, and then I can start tearing apart the rig, bring it outside, and start mocking up some mounting and see how it handles the weight and stuff like that. I've got to figure out how to mount the plate that I have. I've got to clean that plate up, and then I'm going to mount the plate I currently have just directly onto that and then weld it up, and then maybe make some trusses to the U-joint. But also thinking about shortening that. So if that's the case, then I've got to cut the plate that's on there off and then shorten it to whatever height I want to shorten it to. Probably, I don't know, I'd like to maybe cut out like 6 inches, but since the motors are going to be so far inboard, then the cases, the normal issue is these cases are so big when they sit up there. If they sit on the outside of the rig like they do currently, then when the rig goes in its full negative position, if the U-joint was shortened 6 inches, then the frame would hit the top of these cases. So with them now moved this far inboard, normally they would sit like way out here, but moving them so far inboard removes that issue, that dilemma from my list of things to deal with. And also moving them this far inboard will give me a lot more roll on the rig, so side to side roll like that. So that's the next step. Of course, all of this might change since I'm not doing this with any calculations and stuff. Basically, I just have to get everything set up, see how it works, and then see what modifications need to be made from there. Might need a total redesign. This might not just be able to handle the weights. I'm anticipating all the rails, everything, once there's enough weight on top of it, those might just bow outwards. And if that's the case, then we'll do a redesign and address that issue when we get to it. But this is the latest stage.